In southeastern Niger, a camp opens with a special purpose to de-radicalize Boko Haram fighters and their families who turn themselves in.
Here in Nigeria, the police are now better equipped to fight crime and terrorism thanks to a mentorship program organized by the U.S. Embassy in Lagos.
And in South Africa, one teacher is using his power of music to help students to improve at math. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Joker Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos. Welcome to the show that takes you around Nigeria and the continent for stories of wide interest. And I'm joined from Washington by my colleague, Vincent Makori.
Well, thanks a lot, Joker. I'm in Studio 51 here at VOA headquarters in U.S. Capitol. Let's get started with details on story about fine-tuning Nigeria's security forces. Joker has the details.
That's right, Vincent. After a one-month course on detecting and disarming explosives, 60 anti-bomb policemen are getting ready to serve as mentors to other officers across Nigeria. Take a look.
Since the successful dislodgement of Boko Haram insurgents in Nigeria's northeast, thousands of internally displaced persons have been returning to their communities from the IDP camps. But there are security threats characteristic of post-insurgency situations, including hidden landmines. To prevent unsuspecting people from falling prey to such remnants of the terrorists, the Nigeria Police Force is increasing the counter-terrorism capacity of its officers. Through a one-month mentorship program in partnership with some United States experts in Lagos, 60 anti-bomb policemen from various commands in the country were taken through post-blast investigation operations. The leadership of the force is confident that the already trained officers deployed to the northeast are better equipped to safeguard the area.
Domesticated this training by training you so that you can adopt the knowledge you have acquired and also impute the local content of it, and also synchronize that with what we call the Nigerian type of terrorism, which is the Boko Haram.
The regional security officer of the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria, while explaining the benefit of the program, reaffirms America's support for Nigeria.
This training will save lives and hopefully promote even more goodwill in the future between the United States and Nigeria.
The training, which covered chemical and biological nuclear awareness and identification of specific explosives for counter-terrorism personnel, amongst others, is designed to expose the participants to current trends in rendering safety services in the Northeast.
You're watching Africa 54. Let's talk more about the post-insurgency security situation and challenges in Nigeria's northeast. And for that, we're joined on the program by security analyst Chidi Wonu. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Much of the rebuilding efforts we've seen in Nigeria's northeast in the areas of humanitarian assistance and a reconstruction of destroyed infrastructure. What's your assessment of the security situation?
Well, the security situation as we see it now is very fluid. So whilst the Nigerian security forces have driven Boko Haram away from the main population centers and more or less denied them any kind of hold over the territory in the key area of Borno State, Yobe State, and Adamawa State. But Boko Haram is still very active in what we would define as the ungoverned spaces, such as Sambisa Forest, the southern surroundings of Maiduguri itself, the Mandara Mountains, and the area around Lake Chad. So whilst Nigerian security forces might control the main towns, such as Maiduguri, Bama, Buza, Baga, etc., Boko Haram controls the hinterland, and this makes it very difficult for people to move around, and also it gives Boko Haram the opportunity to launch suicide attacks, as we've seen, in waves, not only against Maiduguri, but also against northeastern Cameroon, where there's been waves of suicide bombers going into places like Kolofata, Protocol, or Ashigashia. So the security situation is exceptionally fluid right now.
But what are your expectations of the Nigerian police anti-bomb operations in ensuring the safety of recaptured communities, considering the level of training made available to the policemen?
Well, it's a very interesting question because one is not 100% sure what type of training they received, and more importantly, what equipment they have, and then again, maybe even more importantly, how they're going to be employed. So if taking it at face value, if they receive, good up-to-date training and they're well equipped, then they should be very well resourced on, capable of making sure that those areas are now clear of IEDs. The problem is that not every ID is easy to find. IEDs could have been laid anywhere, not just on roads or in places of military interest, but they could have been laid in fields, in farms, etc. So actually going through every inch of ground to find these IEDs is very laborious, very time-consuming, and very, very expensive. So it's unlikely that that's going to be the case. It's more likely that these policemen will be going in, and once the IEDs have been identified, they'll be going in to either make them safe or to render them, deactivate them, and then bring them in for capture. So again, as I said, there's a lot of variables there, the nature of the training, the equipment, and also how they're employed.
You've repeatedly said that the security forces cannot afford to relax, even though the terrorists have been defeated. What should the security forces do to ensure that there are no cases of reprisal or regrouping, as it were?
It would be very hard for the security forces to completely guarantee that there's going to be no reprisals, and definitely hard for them to prevent the enemy from regrouping. This is because, as I alluded to earlier, the areas where the security forces control, which are the main population centers, are more or less secure. However, the insurgents have a free run of the countryside. They also have, the ability to attack along roads or other, remote areas. So what it requires is a lot of, mobility by the security forces patrolling these areas, both by air and on the ground. In terms of things like reprisals, if you're referring to reprisals against, suspected Boko Haram collaborators, again, with the return of the police and, other civil elements of federal authority, these things should be reduced. They should be included in a proper, amnesty and mobilization process. So one is hoping that, with the return of the police, this is an indication of the return of civil authority and therefore return of normalcy. There should be less reprisals, but one also has to be aware that until Boko Haram is defeated comprehensively, there will always be an element of insecurity in that area.
All right, thank you so much, security analyst Gideon Wanu. Thank you for your time on Africa 54.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. And on Facebook, the address is Africa 54, and check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, Africans in the diaspora look for ways to help their homeland. For many Nigerians abroad, taking part in elections back home helps them do just that. That story after the break.